Welcome back to the Particle Accelerator Podcast. I have Chandra with us today. Chandra, would you introduce yourself?
Sure. Look, I'm from Belgium. My accent will probably betray that. Serial entrepreneur, but I've also worked on the big tech companies, Northrop Grumman, Software AG. An engineer. I was a geek way back. And I'm the founder now of Voicera. And Voicera is about the voice of customers, the voice of people. We are trying to understand not just what they say, but how they say it. We are focused on the emotional and more specifically into the sincerity aspect of what people say. So it's a video analytics to understand body language, facial expressions, tone of voice. And it's early stage. We're just launching the product. It's available online on our site, voicera.io, and people can open an account for free and analyze whoever they want to see if they are really sincere.
That's awesome. Yeah, I took a look at it. It's really cool. I'd love to get to know you a little bit better. And then, of course, we'll dive deep into the innovation that you're working on. One of the ways that I love to get to know people is how did you make your first dollar as a child? For me, it was a paper route and some babysitting. What was it for you?
That's an interesting question. I read the biography of Warren Buffett, and I read that he was next to a golf course. Everybody in Palm Springs is surrounded by golf course. So I see all these balls, and I'm thinking of Warren Buffett when he was like 5 or 6, picking up the balls and building a team. Some would clean them, collect them, and that he would sell them. I didn't do that, but way back, I was like 6 years old, 7 years old. I was gluing these little airplanes of Airfix and Revell 72 small-scale airplanes. I had the catalogs and I would make a transparent paper, draw it, and sell it. I'm surprised that anybody would buy that. I was making a little bit of money. It was a quarter or whatever, but it's 50 years ago, so it was good money.
Was there a toy or a hobby that you had that you think has influenced what you do career wise today?
That's a good question. I've always been fascinated by engineering work, whether it's a dam or a ship, airplane. So complex engineering stuff always fascinated me. I was good at math, so without thinking about the profession of engineer, I decided to study engineering, and here I am.
Great. My last get to know you question. Is there a quote from a famous person that lives in your mind rent free or a core principle that you live by?
Yeah, you have all these motivational quotes on Instagram. Sometimes they are misquotes, so I'm not sure it even came from Benjamin Franklin, but it was about the best way to succeed is to try one more time, or failing 50 times is just learning how not to do things. Each failure is getting you closer to success. I'm not sure if it's exactly how they said it, if it was really Benjamin Franklin. I know that he failed several times to make the light bulb, but I think it applies to us in this early stage where bootstrapping the company, so we didn't get millions from investors. We decided, let's build it, show it to the world, and then raise money when we have good traction. Failing and learning and pivoting all the time is fundamental to the way we are building this company.
Yeah, I think Edison is the light bulb, some similar kind of failing fast. What I love about that is that I think young entrepreneurs struggle with negative self talk. So they think that, okay, I just got to kick my own ass. What I like about what you said is it's not really about that. It's more of either I win or I learn. It's not I win or I lose. And that mindset and that mentality gets us far because we're constantly looking for the next attempt at opportunity rather than looking down or behind. Because first principles thinking is always, okay, what's the new information in front of me? Where am I trying to go with that new information? So I love that. You're pioneering customer insights through emotion, AI, and LMs at Voicera with the tagline Sincerity, enhancing confidence in the truth. What specific problem are you solving that traditional analytics can't address?
Yeah, so everybody's focused on what people say. I just left a video call and there were like 40 people in the Zoom and 30 note takers. What people say, it's a commodity, whether it's Fathom or Read or Google, whatever. When you're talking to a customer and the customer says, I like your product and I think I will renew. In the transcript, it says that he will renew, and then you will put a forecast of 80% chance of closing. But you just saw how I said it. There is no sincerity in that. There is no emotional dimension that the customer is empathic with you. So the truth is, if you analyze how the customer said that, you're really sure he's not going to read. So we joke on the lost on translation, we say lost in transcription, but it's so true. So people are focused on the text output I know that OpenAI is working on voice and the emotion behind a voice, but the world has gone to video during COVID, and now everything happens online. But how people say things, this is the most important thing. You want to understand what they say, of course, but that's a commodity. Having a layer of emotional intelligence and also the core focus of the companies. Sincerity. Now, the problem we're solving is to have a true understanding when trust matters, when the sincerity matters. Where does trust matter in a lot of situations? In a customer-supplier relation, for sure, but also maybe in a dating scenario. But we're not focused on B2C. I'm just pointing that out. In our personal life, we also want to know, is he or she sincere with me? But the focus on the company, it's coaching. So to help people by giving them a mirror to provide emotional intelligent feedback on how people come across for leadership, for sales meetings, public presentations. And the other one is HR. You want to know that people are sincere about their motivation. They will fake it. They will tell you all the things that you want to hear. And if you're not a very professional recruit, or if you don't have a process with 4 or 5 psychologists, you may hire the wrong people, and that's very costly as well. These are the two cases, coaching and HR, that we are focused on. But I believe there are massive opportunities by providing this Sincerity AI as a plugin to all the Zooms and any other video-centric platform. It could add up data that would help take better decisions.
When you were at MoodMe, you created AR experiences for organizations like FIFA and Qatar Airways. How do you bridge the gap between cutting edge emotion AI technology and practical business applications?
MoodMe initially was augmented reality, and it was quite successful before COVID. Qatar Airways that you just mentioned was just before COVID. And then we raised money in Qatar with the Qatar Development Bank. Then COVID happened and the world of sports died for a couple of years. This business has been put aside. We're still active, but low intensity. That's MoodMe. It's another company. It continues. I'm not the CEO anymore, but today the company is focused on emotion analytics on the edge. So providing emotion intelligence without sending people's face on the cloud, on the mobile scenario, intelligent camera.
Yeah, that's really cool. We have an AR practice at my firm where we're really focused on safety experiences, how to operate a forklift, how to handle a firearm, operate a ladder, or handle a patient. This is really impactful because folks are not in a risk environment where they could make a mistake. They're in the VR environment experiencing those things. It's interesting that we're augmenting reality to really save and reduce risk. I'm excited to see where some of the optical technology goes because there's definitely some situations, especially around emotional intelligence, where I'd love to have a HUD or some kind of real time feedback. You have a patent for sharing emotions through 3-dimensional avatars. How do you see emotional AI evolving beyond just measurement to actually influencing customer experiences?
The analytics is computer vision. The emotion AI that we do is not tied to the voice, whereas in VoiceAir, we analyze both voice and facial expressions. On the emotion AI of Mood, it's just computer vision. It's super light. We had a grant from the Belgian government. We work with one of the best universities, the University of Mons in South Belgium. We focused on not just the quality of the emotion detection, but also the fact that it's super low computing in environment. So it would run on a cheap smartphone like iPhone 6 in real time without storing the face, not sending it to the cloud. So the use cases are really low-end computing device like these glasses. Of course, the glass is connected to a smartphone that you have in your pocket maybe, but still you don't need to send it to the cloud. So for privacy aspects is very important. And the quality is good, so you can get real-time data. If you need to send it to the cloud, you are with the worldwide wait, as we joke. You don't control the delay of propagation of the video stream to the cloud, analyzing in the cloud, and give the result back. When you get the results, the facial expressions have changed, or the person is not in front. We stopped, for instance, with SoftBank, but that was just before COVID, so all these opportunities vanished. SoftBank had portfolio companies in China doing emotion detection. We're not the only ones doing that, but they said, dude, we can, and they own US Sprint in the US. That was before the merger with T-Mobile. Their vision of the future of US Sprint would be robots replacing the salespeople and greeting the customer when they walk into the store to get a new phone and all that. The robot needs to look at the face of the customer walking in and greet him or her with emotional intelligence like we do as a human. If you're working like that, you're not gonna, hey, how are you? You don't do that. You don't want to interrupt the person because she or he looks concentrated. So you need emotional intelligence, but instantly. You cannot have a cloud architecture when you have a robot talking to a human and needs to adapt in real time. Even started talking to SoftBank Robotics because they said, no, for national security reason, we cannot put some made in China facial AI stuff into a store. So that's a use case where doing it on the edge is essential for privacy, but also for instant emotional intelligence.
Yeah, it brings up a lot for me there. And I think for the internet and global commerce, the cloud renaissance was very impactful. But as we're looking at real time voice and reaction, the hardware requirement on the edge or near device is definitely going to increase. We're seeing some of that with the things we're working on, voice enabling, some fairly common use cases, voice enabling the order transaction, voice enabling inventory management. There is a latency when we're trying to centralize those platforms in the cloud. There's some use cases that need that real time. When you introduce distance between the user experience and the infrastructure, we got to close that gap. I'm super impressed by your background. You speak 7 languages and have worked across Europe, Latin America, Brazil, Silicon Valley for over 2 decades. What patterns do you see in how different cultures approach and adopt innovation?
I come from Belgium, Northern Europe, 20 years ago or 25 now. I was impressed. Brazil, although it's supposedly a less developed country than Europe, had 3 banks with 1 million online banking customers. In Brazil, I'm talking about the dot-com days, the early 2000s. And in Belgium, big banks had not moved yet. Sometimes you have this technology leapfrog of emerging countries. Sometimes the most developing countries, in particular Europe, I think are very careful, very cautious, very slow sometimes at trying new stuff. Whereas emerging countries, and also I think the US are faster mover, they adopt technology faster. In the field where we operate of analyzing facial expressions to give sincerity score, you talk to Americans and they would say, how can I make money with that? Of course, they will also look at the legal implication. Is it legal to do it, given all the legislation on AI? In Europe, it's a bit the other way around. Before they think of the business opportunity, legal content. Oh, there is a new AI legislation in Europe. And then they take that as an obstacle to go further. Actually, if you dig into the legislation in Europe, there are ways to use our technology in similar scenarios. Maybe it's a bit more restrictive, but the barriers of innovation, I think it's a barrier, the over legislation, good intention of protecting people and so on, like the cookies on the website, how many times they've been asked to accept cookies. I think Europe is a bit too slow, unfortunately, in adopting innovation, financing innovation. They expect the governments to chip in more than private capital. So yeah, I think the US remains by far the most dynamic ecosystem. That's why Voicera, although my previous company was created in Belgium and we got the significant support from the Belgian government, I decided to create in the US, focused on the US market, which is also a huge market, not fragmented like Europe. Even if we have the EU, every market is different, the languages are different as well. The 7 languages I speak, everybody knows immediately that I'm not from there. It's not that I speak them like a native, no?
Yeah, we've helped some companies with their globalization efforts to address GDPR. And it's always like we want to globalize because we want to have our platform accessible and compliant in the Europe market. That means data needs to reside in the geography. We need to use cloud infrastructure that's in the geography. And we get to the cost side of that. And they're like, okay, what's the other option? Because globalization creates this duplicative cost. When we really talk about it, there's usually contractual things that can take place. There are some compromises that allow you to get through the regulation. Obviously, you're seeing consent on personal data and the GDPR regulations that are front and center on the user experience, making sure that if the European consumer consents to have their data be residing in the US, then you've at least informed them and they've consented. Now, nobody reads that, but when a European consumer clicks, yes, I'm good with this, they really are saying that a US company can have my data. I don't know that the European consumer is actually reading and caring So it's like extra hurdles to jump to. There have been a couple of platforms that have chosen to incur the cost because they really want to satisfy a B2B relationship in the European market, or they want that as a value add, as a value proposition. It does incur an expense to expose your tech in a compliant way to the European market. So I think larger companies will try to stretch their exposure. They want to be successful. They tend to need to be successful in the US market first before they have the capital to make that jump.
But yeah, you don't want to spend 5 years just in the US and then go international. And in the meantime, you have copycats all over the world. So you're forced to go global, otherwise you're going to leave the space. I think Grupo was doing business just in the US, and then they had a clone in Germany, and the guy who built it actually exited to Groupon. So in the end, everybody was happy, except the shareholder of Groupon when it crashed. But he let someone build exactly the same thing. He didn't invent anything in Europe. They just cloned Groupon, and then there was no other way for Groupon to enter the European market. They had to buy these guys. So for the data, the GDPR, I think it's fair enough to require that the data resides in Europe, or when it's really national security, in the country of the citizen. I think Asian countries have the same kind of law. But as you say, the informed consent is so mind-numbing, intentionally lawyered up, that who reads that? And the people click because they want. Sometimes I think it's overprotective. It's not just GDPR. The EU now has put in place the AI Act, which is very far-reaching. It's a cost of doing business in Europe. Maybe there will be a consumer pushback. The problem that I see as a European, and I worked 9 years as an official of the EU, or way back, 30 years ago, I worked at the EU building the information highways of the single market, and I see that today Europe is a consumer of technology made in USA or made in China when it comes to the mobile infrastructure. Europe is really a laggard in tech. How many trillion-dollar companies are there out there? Europe, they still brag about a unicorn. A unicorn is 1 divided by 1,000 of the size of the Microsoft and Google, Meta and Nvidia. It's really bad. We're the best in gastronomy and the beautiful castles. It will remain a source of beauty income, but the tech war is totally lost. The Europeans are just buying made in USA. It's a consequence of this over legislation, fragmented market. I'm here in the US and happy to be. It's my new company. I will eventually go to the European market, although we're focused on the US market. We have some customers now in Colombia, the emerging countries, Latin America, very early adopters of new stuff coming from the US. So we have customers outside of the US already.
Yeah. And I don't want to glaze over this part of your background. So you're speaking from some serious experience here. You were with Internationalize IT, and you help companies expand to 20 plus countries, including emerging markets like Algeria, Angola, the Congo. And you've adapted innovation strategies for different economic and technological maturity levels. I see that you often emphasize cultural sensitivity as the key. How does this philosophy influence your approach to building global AI products?
This is another side of my life. It's my past life. I was not building my own technology company. I was helping technology companies sell globally. It was a consequence of my experience. First, I was 9 years with the EU. So at the EU, I was, at that time, way back then, it was 15 countries. Now there's 27 or 28. I lost count. But 15 countries, that was already very diverse. And you had the Finnish and the Greeks, Spanish and the Germans all in the same room. It was fascinating. But you would see how different people were thinking. And we were trying to build the information highway. So these 9 years at the European Community Union now were formative, because you couldn't push the German way to the Greeks or vice versa. This consensus building was exciting. After that, I left the EU because it was too bureaucratic for me. I went where my heart led me, which was Brazil. I am a big fan of Brazil. My wife is from Brazil. And so I started the company with locals initially, and then I did a lot of business in these 15 years with Internationalize IT. It was capitalizing on this experience of selling something from place A to place B. It's not a copy-paste. It needs a very different... In Brazil, they call it tropicalização. That means tropicalize, adapt a product. The product needs to be adapted, but the way of selling it as well. Sometimes it's much more relational. You only start talking about the product after 4 years over dinner instead of 5 minutes in Silicon Valley. It's 1 minute chit chat and then tell me about your product. In Brazil, speak for hours about anything else. And I built a network, Internationalized IT. It was a team of very nice people with whom I worked on Algerian deals, on Syria, way before the war in Syria. We did business in Syria. Very often it was with international money. So it was in Syria, in Algeria, there was some funding from either United Nations, World Bank, or European Union. So it was open RFP. We were bidding against other tech giants or teaming up with others. So it was a lot of that business, but also with local money. In Brazil, for sure, there was a lot of money locally. Yeah, so that was very exciting because every deal was different. And I had local partners in Congo, in Nigeria. We were all part of the same business development team.
Yeah, and you've been running Verdemar Consulting for 24 years, doing due diligence and CEO coaching. I see some of that CEO coaching coming into your Voicera use case. This is a bit of a self-serving question because we're a software consulting firm. So of course we do software development, but we also have a very prolific data science and AI, but also cloud engineering. My background is in online advertising and legal technology and the travel industry. And a couple of years back, I added the CTO advisory. I've done 5 successful ventures from that early stage to an exit stage or multiple rounds of investment. And so how has your advisory approach evolved as AI has transformed business landscapes? I'm definitely seeing a shift between some of the traditional ways that I would advise a client towards a scalable platform and then how that's shifting with AI. What's your perspective?
So Verdemar and Internationalized IT were similar companies. One survived. Internationalized IT was a big group of people, and we were doing tens of deals in parallel and jumping from one to the other. Whereas Verdemar has been my own consultancy company. I've done a few different things with Verdemar, like you mentioned, due diligence. I haven't done a lot of them, but having my experience of being analyzed by investors, I'd also started to advise companies on doing due diligence for them, for investment funds. I did that in New York for Pegasus a few years ago. All these consultancy projects were pre-ChatGPT. So it was very different software. It was enterprise software for telecom, billing software, fraud detection software for banks, and big governmental systems. It was typically enterprise solutions rather than global SaaS platforms. Different types of sales, putting a lot of emphasis on the cultural dimension, the relation building. The local partnership is also fundamental. You need the right local partner to deliver services, to tropicalize the product or offering. It was before the tidal wave of Gen AI. On the coaching side, I've always been fascinated by the human emotions and mixing that with technology. Can technology help us decode human emotions? We always like to say, no, I don't need AI. I am looking at your face. I don't need AI to tell me. But imagine a doctor-patient relation and we meet over 2 years. You're on the treatment or as a psychologist and his patients. There you get emotion data. Instantly, I can look at your face and understand your emotion. But how do you look compared to a week, a month, a year ago? So capturing the data, therefore helping visualizing the data so that it tells a story that we can interpret easily is a big help. That's what brought the emotion AI on the edge. And now with Voicera, we're going further. We are focused on Sincerity, which is right now, as far as I know, the blue ocean. Nobody's doing anything like that. As far as I know, it's changing, of course, very fast. But it is an interesting AI assistant to do better coaching in the end.
Yeah, sounds like you're on the cusp of really lie detection almost. I can just imagine some businesses. I would not even mind that in some of my interview processes, right? Because a globally remote business, and I have to be really careful even about how I recruit. So I have to ask questions that imply that the answer is a story because the AI can't tell a story. So if I'm interviewing someone and I ask them, tell me the technical implications of this decision on Kubernetes, a very technical question, that they could be running ChatGPT in the background where it's already picked up on the question and is delivering the answer. Of course, we've rejected these candidates, but we've had candidates answer very robotically all of our questions. It's straight out of the ChatGPT is what we feel, whether that's true or not. So we've had to really tailor our questions in the recruiting process to hear a story. The legitimate interviewee is answering with, at this place, I did this and I ran into this problem and this is how I solved it. They're telling a story that's unique to them. We get a really good feeling about those types of candidates.
Yeah, the recruitment is a big challenge. The technical, purely technical question, as you said, and we see that also in our company. We see the robotic kind of answer. They all look the same. Mind-numbing. Everybody's using ChatGPT to sell themselves or to sell their product. Next thing you know, we will go to the beach and we will put an agent to fill all these calls. Yeah, I think.
Yeah, I hear that. I'm skeptically optimistic about that. I think we still want human connection. I'm worried about the young man in a world where this AI is getting more emotionally intelligent. I'm worried about one of my sons. I have 4 kids, but one of my sons is 11. And by the time he's 13, does he start to associate more with a virtual friend group or an AI-based friend group or even an artificial girlfriend? No, hopefully not. But that's my concern, is that these AI relationships are more impactful, because I can ask my wife to be more affirming and typically that conversation doesn't go super well. But if I were to ask an AI to be more affirming, I would get exactly what I requested. Yeah, I'm worried about the allure of artificial relationships as we get deeper into this.
Scary, isn't it? The deep fake. Right now, I know that you're a human, but we know that for sure in 2 years. I think it's not if, it's when. When are we going to create deep fakes that are as realistic as a call like this? It's coming. It's just a matter of time. And then I train my agent to behave like me with his body language, my accent. If we have a good AI agent, we be in all these meetings. Maybe it's a few more years than that, but look at the money they're putting in, whether it's Grok, Chat, GPT, or Gemini. It's just tens of billions of dollars that they are putting out to solve these problems. So it's going to happen very fast.
Yeah, I'm here for that in its practical advancement of commerce. But what I found is that I have to be very careful when I choose to use ChatGPT or Claude, because I'm far less emotionally connected to the work when I do that. I've told this story many times, but I was in a Bible study, and one of the activities in the Bible study was to develop personal psalms. I put some vulnerable personal details into chat and I got my psalms and it was great. I edited it a little bit and I went to the Bible study and I read it. But other guys that were sharing their psalms, they were much more emotionally engaged. While I completed the task, I missed the point. As more marketers do vibe marketing and ask AI to punch up their messaging, we're already seeing it. LinkedIn has become saturated with the automated SDRs. My email is saturated with the automated SDRs, and we're just at the beginning. Sales is all this automation going on without what really is so important, an emotional connection. I believe that commerce moves at the speed of trust. We might be moving faster, but in the wrong direction, away from trust. I'm sure whenever you do a big business deal, it's face to face and there's handshakes and interpersonal communication. I don't know any amount of automated SDR that's going to get us to that trust zone.
I agree. We built the company remotely as we didn't have the funding. I built a company with people who are already middle-aged in their career. They usually have kids, husband has another job. It was too complicated to ask people to move. And so I met the right CTO. Initially, he was from Bulgaria. The second CTO who joined the company after that is from Austin. The first chief AI was also from Austin. So we built a company remotely. We are all in the cap table. We signed a shareholder agreement, but some of us never met. And we built relations without meeting in person because we speak to each other for a few hours every week. But nothing beats the water cooler conversation or the let's take a walk of Steve Jobs where you reinvent the world. I miss that. But on the other hand, it gives so much freedom to pick and choose the right people for your team without asking them to give up a big part of their life. Ask your kids to move from Dallas to San Francisco. It will be a tragedy for each of them because of their parents. Having the possibility to work remotely, we do a company retreat here and there. That's a great solution to have the personal connection sometimes, but most of the time we have the comfort of our existing way.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. I'm old school, obviously. I think many people in their 20s or 30s are comfortable with doing everything virtual. I like face for important things like deals or partners. Yeah.
Yeah. No, and I agree with you completely. We're 100% virtually remote company all over the globe. I do my best at least every 2 years to make a trip to India and have a big event where most of my team is and have that FaceTime. But it is a bit of a luxury. And even just getting together for a couple of days, there's no centralized location anymore. So everyone in the company is traveling to a destination to meet up. What that's causing me to do as a business owner, as a CEO, I'm creating a lot of content. Not only doing the podcast, but I'm also creating regular talking head videos to broadcast the culture and broadcast different key fundamentals. And I'm also having to bring people together to do coaching. So we have this concept of squads, which is 90-minute virtual meetings that small groups are having. Think of it like a professional forum, and so we've divided the 125 people team into a bunch of practice area aligned squads. And the squad is really for that interpersonal connection. But then I have the interpersonal connection with the squad leaders. I spend 90 minutes a month on video working on personal development topics. One thing we did is, what is your primal question? There's a great book about your primal question, the one question that you're asking the world. We've also done Clifton Strengths Finder and talked about our strengths. I'm working with my leaders around what is their core purpose? What is the purpose that drives them, and getting them to develop a personal purpose statement so that they can be engaging with their respective squads and practice areas.
And yeah, it's funny that you're talking a lot about coaching and personal growth, because the usual way of building a startup is fall in love with the problem, your customer, blah, 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 and build a solution, iterate, and so on. But here it grew out of emotion detection. Emotion detection was getting a bit, I wouldn't say commoditized, but it's not like the next big thing. Sincerity was born like that, experimenting with different computer vision, audio, multiple models analyzing the same conversation. And we see it in our teams, in our customers as well. It's a quote from the CEO of a company I really like. People leave leaders, they don't leave companies. So if you have a person like just on top of you, like your glass ceiling, is not inspirational, is not smart, is not whatever, you're not learning, you're not growing. Even if you meet your quota and sometimes he will brag about what you did without mentioning you, people leave companies like that. So turning executives into better leaders, more empathy, so this emotional intelligence is fundamental. And so we see this is the key of success of knowledge economy companies. It's to have leaders who are inspiring, who are authentic, and that make their teams wake up every morning and work for them.
Yeah.
This emotional intelligence and the sincerity in particular are great tools for that. To improve something, you want to measure it, right? They always say that. But we don't say that too much about emotional intelligence, but we should. The AI is able to do that today.
Yeah, I'm excited about what you're doing with Coursera because I could just see how impactful that data would be on, hey, what's the level of engagement on these virtual meetings? Otherwise, we just don't know. People are showing up on camera, but they're doing a bunch of work on the side, knowing that, hey, we're having these meetings, and how engaged and present are the folks in these meetings is of huge value. And then you add to that your use cases around deception detection and sincerity. That is something that I just don't even, in this virtual world now where we're having mostly virtual meetings all over the globe, how important that data could be, and really how revolutionary it is to be able to do something like that. I don't even think people are thinking that's possible. And most businesses are building a remote culture now.
Sometimes we are reaching out to people and they think we are analyzing the transcripts and detecting sincerity from what people say. But as I mentioned in the example, what they say is only a small part of the story. What is really important is how they say it. Sometimes, yeah, we have to educate a little bit. It's not at 99% precision, but guess what? Humans are not good at detecting deception. There is research from the Berkeleys and other Ivy League on that. They've done research on human capacity of detecting deception, and we are just better than flipping a coin. 55% is the average of the different studies that we looked at. Humans are not good because we are humanly connected, emotionally connected, or maybe you dislike someone, you will be tempted to call him or her a liar, and vice versa, you like him, So you want to believe that it's true. We have our bad days and good days. So even if you are not at 99, we're very far. We're working on improving the diversity, the cultural diversity, and the ethnic diversity of our data. In the end, because we have voice and face, we require very good data. Initially, we had good data, but not diverse enough. Now we're going all across the globe, recruiting people in Thailand, in China, to do videos, to train our AI across cultures, across languages as well. It's work in progress. It's not perfect, but I believe we're moving the needle a lot compared to the human perception of sincerity.
Yeah, it's so cool. I really appreciate your time. If people liked what you've had to share today, how would you like them to connect with you?
In or email is fine. You can share that at my company name, voicera.io. So don't confuse it. There are other Voicera out there. Not a lot, but a couple of others. So, but tell me about Particle 41. Where is the 41 coming from?
Yeah, so it's the element niobium, and niobium is combined with steel to make it stronger and more flexible. In the foundry process, it's an added element. Very little steel is pure steel. It's added with this element that makes it stronger and more flexible. That's where we originated the name. Who specifically are you most interested in engaging with through your social connections?
Right now, it's decision makers in the business of coaching. We have two customers starting a project with us. We're doing pilots at the moment to improve the product based on their feedback. I'm keen to do pilots. You said that you do a lot of coaching in your organization. I'd love to do an experiment. I'm not trying to sell it to you right now. It's just a free of charge software. Then we provide and we do a joint learning experiment. You analyze your interviews or coaching sessions and you get the result back, and then you will tell, I don't like this, I don't like that, and we'll try to improve the product. So if you're interested, you can open a free account on our website, voicera.io. You open an account, it's free, but there is a limit of 5 videos per month, so it's not a lot. But okay, you can get a sense of what it delivers. We could do a pilot where we remove that limit and you can help us improve the product.
Yeah, great. But first, as we close here, I just want to really thank you for your time. Thank you for your insight. You are an absolute rock star. You have this amazing background, and then now you're doing this really innovative thing. So I appreciate your time and being on the podcast with us today.
Yeah, thanks so much anyway. Thanks for the opportunity. Also, it was a very interesting conversation. I really appreciate spending this hour with you, Benjamin. I look forward to staying in touch and happy to talk to anybody who reaches out through your podcast.
Awesome.